Thank you for that introduction, Ted. Good morning, bonjour, everybody, maybe afternoon where you are. Thank you again as we start to the CAF for putting on this seminar. And a big shout out to Anita and her wonderful team, her technical team, who have brought us all together across the country and in the States and last night in Japan and in Russia. This morning, my focus in my class is a fairly simple one, something that is fundamental to everything about where are your feet in relation to the rest of your body. And it's easy at times to get disconnected. And so we will spend a little time just breaking down some basic movements to find that alignment so that we use that to unbalance our partner and to direct them into our center rather than being sucked into our partner's center. This morning's class, then, it is not Ben's class. That was a wonderful wake up, Ben, and we really miss your Genki spirit out here at Nuvik. But this will be a little more reflective, and I hope you can bear with me. We will just get started. Fundamental thing in Aikido is about balance and transfer of our weight from foot to foot. As we move, we're constantly readjusting and realigning. One of the things I'm in a program, and it's an aging study, and one of the things they do is they test your balance, and you have to stand on one knee or one foot for a minute on each side, and then going to the other side. I invite you all now just to stand and actually just do that. Stand up and settle yourself and then raise one knee and see if you're steady or not. Put it out. If you're really steady, you can think of Nitan's class from yesterday and lower your center, lower going up and down. If you start to wobble, don't worry, just put both feet down. Recenter. I find this was a challenge for me coming in today because it's the first time in the dojo, and these mats are quite a bit softer than my practice space in my basement. So again, new muscles that you have to think of. You have to soften, you have to readjust, and think of that. When I was thinking of this class, I was thinking about Osawa Sensei's teaching and his hanmi, and the question arose yesterday about distancing and stuff. If you think of it, there we were last night. Osawa Sensei was there, and everything that we were thinking about, he presented every kind of form from moving. As you move back, when we move slightly to the side, if we're doing ryotadori. When we finish tenkan, and our hands are like this. When we did the other one, we move, and we're moving our back foot off the line. So hanmi is not a static thing. It depends on where you are, where in relation to your partner, and to the movement that you're about to do. It depends whether you're going to be stepping in, if you're going to move in Gyaku hanmi and moving out. Sensei talks about moving your foot to the point where it's closer. It makes more sense if you're in this hanmi to move your body this way. If you're in more open stance, we slide in or we step in and we go through here. Now I'd like to start again with that stance. So take some time, get into hanmi. And I want you to think about moving and just moving back. Osawa Sensei does this quite a bit as you're finding out what is the best ma for you. As we move, as we get a bigger stance, we might be more stable, but at that point, it's harder to move because we're more likely to go off kilter. And if we're trying to move and keep ourselves with that body shaft being straight, we need to have a reasonable distance between our feet. If you think of a small mai or a small stance is chippy, practice lowering your center. We talked about this, Steve Sensei in yesterday's class talked about having soft knees. This idea, if you're up here and your knees are straight, your center is high. Lower your center, and it will probably be easier for you to move. Think of moving forward and back. Moving forward. Our basic little warm-up, getting the muscles moving. And back. When we move, at some point, we have to move. As we move, that means one of our feet has to lift. One thing has to move. We have to transfer our weight from one to the other. Our basic forms we have step, slide, pivot, and tenkan. We have a limited space here, so we'll start with our pivot. We did that this morning, and if you notice, Don Ragush Sensei referenced this yesterday. It's something that always reminds me of Kahar Sensei. He had this little exercise. So try and do this. Standing in Hanmi, raise your toes, come to the center. Raise your other foot. Raise back. Your whole body moves as one. Your eyes are leading the motion, and your hand is coming over as well. If you think about being on this line, as you rotate, your hand is now here. So if you are held, and you do this, and you turn, you've now extended your partner. There's where we work from getting our position. We turn at this point here, we're extending the partner and then back. One of the things I have found with online class is the first class I did, I was surprised to find that my balance was not what I expected. It was amazing how much I had been depending on my partner to provide that extra anchor. One of the advantages of this online solo practice is that it gives us an opportunity to examine where we are and think about where our balance is, to figure out where the weight transfer is going. Once we pivot, basic movements from there, we slide, so we move up. I liked Steve Sensei's expression yesterday about gathering up your back foot. In Aikido, we rarely move one foot and leave the rest of it behind. We are in a totally different thing. We're usually operating in tandem in some fashion, and we pivot. So all together, so as we're moving from here, yesterday's class with Osawa Sensei, we moved in to the face. We moved in to the face. Always bringing up his back foot. The attacker, as he said, you're raising up together and you slide in and cut. Slide in and cut. Slide in and cut. And pivot. When we move to stepping, I find our beginners usually as you step, you hear this thump, thump on that. And I was once, so imagine you're on a rocky beach in bare feet. And as you move forward there, your weight is now on this foot. You're searching out that ground, and then you settle. You're on that one foot, searching out the next spot, and settling. Your weight's on your right, move forward, and settle. The weight's on the left, move forward, and settle. Together, so you're stepping forward, settling. Your weight transfers, and we find our hanmi. where it transfers, and we find our harmony. Where it transfers, we find our harmony. The last of those, as we did this morning, is the idea, and we did yesterday, Tainun Tenkan is part of most of our practices all the time. And Osawa Sensei did 2 forms in the beginning. As he came in, we're being held here, and we have this idea of pressing forward, and then you do the turn, and then adjust when you finish. He demonstrated a few times of this idea of sliding slightly off the line, bringing it to your center, and this foot starts to turn. So for beginners, this is a good way of thinking of teaching them that at this point, you're going to be pivoting on this leg. So now you can adjust. We pivot. Our weight goes out to here so that when we finish, our whole body is focused and forward and equally balanced. When we don't pay attention to that, it's very common to find this, put your back. So move forward, spend that little time, do 3, 4 times, 1 this way and adjust. Rotate out and adjust. Rotate out and adjust. Rotate out and adjust. Of course, over time, as Sensei said, next time we speed it up, it becomes a single movement. Follow through. Our 4 basic movements. In our class, when we have beginners, we sometimes start, and people all start, as an exercise, we will start and call out, and you can do it together very briefly. You can slide, slide, pivot, pivot, step, step, and come, step. So keep moving through, and it becomes something that becomes ingrained in your mind. From here, again, we're moving through 2 of the exercises that we do along with Tenkan, are Uchi Tenkan and Soto Tenkan. Uchi Tenkan was done with Steve Sensei and Osawa Sensei, and this morning with Ben, that you're moving off the line, but your hand is now in front of you. You're moving off the line, and Sensei often has us do this. You move off the line, you raise this foot. It's not meant to stay there, but the idea of moving that foot is that it allows you to adjust for where your partner, to unbalance them from here. If we're here, my arm is here, I slide, now I can move it. Off to the side, you can slide and step. All together, we're doing that. The idea also, think of this, if it was Shihonage, we'd move off the line, we would be here. This step is entirely dependent on the size of your partner and the length of their arms. So by not putting your foot immediately down, you don't end up exposing yourself. Remove, moving in, 4 times each. Leap. Sound. Soto Tenkan is used in so many things, from our Ura, Iriminage, Shihonage, Kotegaeshi. So again, we're now going to turn. We do our Tenkan and we pivot. Tenkan and pivot. The key here when we're starting is, as we've gone through to here, our hand never goes back behind our center. It doesn't matter how long we've been practicing. We all need an occasion to remember When I was younger, and if I was out of line, you're young and vigorous and strong, you can use your muscles. As you get older, you need to consolidate everything much more. So let's move in to where we go. So this morning, we did in Ben's class, movement number 2. Slide, and he moved in. So from this position, we can go one of 2 ways. This morning, it was a sliding underward. Now we're going to go watch once. We're going to turn, slide, and step forward to throw. Together, and slide, and pivot, and slide, and throw. When you practice statically, it's even more important to keep your hand in front of your center. If you're held strongly here, you cannot, with a stronger person, you can't move them. So from this point, as we rotate, it's now in front of me. I can use my hips, and I can throw. Turn. Let's do it together continuously. We'll start here, rotate, step, pivot, and step. Sensei talks about the importance of being aware of where your partner is and establishing that my at the end of every practice. That is your static practice of moving in. Alternately, in a flowing practice, as the partner is coming, we do the same thing. We rotate and then move. So if you watch, as they're coming, you're guiding them. As soon as they make contact, you guide them through. This is more an exercise in timing. So altogether, as our partner, imagine coming in, you've offered your hand. As they come, you remove that hand and slide forward. You offer the hand, you remove it, and you slide forward. 4 times continuously. Offer, remove, rotate, move down. Rotate. Each time, we're being aware of our whole body posture. And when we throw, we want to extend, but still have a strong stance at the end. Of course, another variation on that, we're doing this in sliding. Dynamically, this can also work with the tenkan. As the person is coming, we can tenkan. It's a shorter and more explosive thing to do sometimes. It depends on your mai and the speed at which your partner is attacking. But we can tenkan and then slide forward. So all together, from here, tenkan. Partner is coming. As soon as they reach this point, tenkan and throw. 4 times continuously. Tenkan, throw. Set up. Tenkan, throw. This question came up recently about, is it better to do static practice or dynamic practice? They have different purposes and different strengths. The static form really forces you to become very aware of your center and to bring your partner. One of the things that often as a beginner, if we're going to do something, we end up like this. As you move, you need to use all of your power. a solo practice removes that temptation to look at your partner as you turn. So you can move any of those. So statically, you're focusing on where you're moving and where the partner is gripping. Hilary Sensei always said that if you are gripped really strongly, forget about it. Don't look at that. Move around that point. Now you're in a much better position to either break the grip, move forward, or toward your partner. So think about that again. As you do there, it's a very strong grip. You can't pull away from it until you're here. You can either turn and walk, or you can tenkan and throw forward. This morning, Ben Sensei did all of his attacks. He was saying it was gyakuhami. And so when we think of sliding in, sliding with a pivot, we've got to slide and we pivot and move out. So for a change, since everyone's done that one, I will start I-humming. So as Ben said, from a slide pivot becomes a step pivot. We're going to do Itatori Kotegaeshi. From here, again, I'm gripped here. If I come in, I haven't got any extension of my partner. Thinking about those principles again, about moving your hips and moving your body, as I move forward, this is out here now. I can then use this element, slide out to the side to extend my partner. One more time. If I'm here, move, slide out, and turn. So all together, in Hadari, we step forward and cut down. The partner will be fully extended. Step forward, cut, and down. Here, step down. Together, each. Bring off to the side, and down. One more time, think of the weight is on our left foot, on our right, and down. We're constantly transferring weight from side to side. Transfer and down. 4 times. Step 2. Step each. Align. And you'll notice each time I moved a little more. So the first, most basic form, you step, you slide in front. You step out and back. 4 times each. We can still do this with the tenkan. As we get to this point and take control of the hand, we can tenkan. As we get to this point, we tenkan, pivot. Together. Here, we tenkan, pivot, and back. Here, we step, tenkan, pivot. And as we do each of these movements, our eyes are leading that movement. We're not focused on the partner, but we're going where we need to go And our whole body and our hands are connected to that as well. When I was looking at the class again, the end of the day, I said, oh, Steve Sensei and Don Ruger Sensei and Osawa Sensei did all the things that I had put in my original lesson plan. I said, oh, it's back to the drawing board, but and at times you think, well, why shouldn't that be? We all had different focuses, but we're all using the same form to demonstrate these different points of our practice. One of the beauties of Aikido in this idea of movement and of weight transfer, those reminds me of all the fulcrums, and we've got lever arms. There's the whole sense of physics, the body mechanics. It must appeal to the engineering mind. But this idea, I think I will, as our last one, I will still do the same one that Steve Sensei and Osawa Sensei used in their Iriminage. So what I'm going to do this time is to start in this position. If my partner is here and we're connected, and I move that, my partner will come into me. If my partner is pushing against me, and I remove that, now I bring him towards me. Now my weight has gone to this foot. So you watch once and we'll do it all together. From here again, as I move, my weight goes to my left foot. I open my body out and notice where my hand is, my feet are in the same position. I like to plant my heel and allow my toes to rise. From this position, as my hand rises, my feet rotate, and now my weight is on this. Now I can open. Do this. From here, weight goes to the right foot, goes to the left. You open up, you open. Osawa Sensei tells us often about that step towards the end. When we're here, we've moved our weight, we cut, we raise up. If we don't move that foot, you can have, if you have a large partner, you've got all that weight coming over you, and now see that my body is no longer aligned, and I may very well be unbalanced at the end. So what we're trying to do here is move from this point down, out, and forward. All of these things allow us to move down, foot comes up. So together slowly a couple of times, and then we'll do 4 times moving in. Here, think of this energy coming towards you. Move off the line and direct it to here. As you rotate up, your foot will rotate. Now your weight is fully on your right foot. One more time slowly. Energy is coming here. We allow it to go back here. Rotate up and slide through. Of course, when we do this and we cut down, you don't linger here. If you linger, the partner who's attacking will go from this position of being like this to planting their foot. And now you have all of their weight to move up. So let's now move it and make it a circular movement, everyone together. And right foot forward. From here, move in, down, up, slide out, and move in, keeping your body straight. From here, move, down, up, and move your body. Together 4 times, continuously. Each. Each. Again, always we're moving from one foot and aligning everything on that one side. Move to the other side and align. So those are basic movements I would like you to think of when you're practicing in solo practice. Think of that idea of keeping yourself in line, not turning before you've moved your hips and your feet. Keeping your eyes aligned with your hands and your feet. As I get older, my body tells me much faster when I'm not in alignment. I tend to be pigeon-toed, so I have to be very aware of my knee being over my foot. So if we do that in our quiet practices and our solo time, I think we will be really strong and in a good position when we come back to partner practice to continue in a strong, safe, and energetic manner. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this wonderful seminar. Again, this has really energized me to looking forward to the summer and the fall for a reawakening of Aikido in Canada. At that, we will just finish our class, and if there are any questions, I will endeavor to answer them. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Hilary Sensei, thank you so much for that session. So great to see everything so clearly and well organized, and also to hear you link it to other elements in other seniors instructors presentations. Lot for us to keep practicing on our own until we can actually get back into a dojo. Excuse me, we don't seem to have any questions in the chat box right now, so maybe I can take that opportunity to ask you a couple of questions that I myself have until somebody else feels free to jump in. I'd be interested to hear about your experience in some of the special programs you had for practitioners with physical challenges or limitations, particularly those who might have been challenged in terms of some of the footwork you were showing us and teaching us now, and then how you kind of helped them with that part of it?
Well, there were two who came to mind, who come to mind immediately. Well, two sets. One of them, actually, his physical challenge was he was blind, totally blind. But he would tap his way to the mat and come to the edge of the mat and sit, and I was always blown away. But he had to hook in on the auditory cues. And we had him practice. He always practiced as one of three. So there was his partner, and there was his guide, and then they took turns. And so I would always come over to perform the technique on him at the beginning, and so he knew how to react as an uke. And then we would, through words, walk him through the basic movements. And he went through and did his whole year of practicing before he went on. And to the point where when he got his certificate, I was worried about him coming out to the right place on the mat. And I had assigned a senior student, and he had a space, and his turn came up, and all of a sudden there was no senior student. He just shikoed up, stopped literally 2 feet in front of me, took his mat, shikoed in reverse back to exactly the same spot, and took his place. So that was a really interesting experience for me. I had 2 other students who had cerebral palsy, and for both of them, one in particular, she was very strong in her upper body, but her legs, she could not do a forward roll, but she could take a break fall, and she loved doing break falls. And but she could throw people because she could be stable enough to throw, but she couldn't physically get down and do a roll. And one of our very big senior students, he would practice with her and allow her, she would be able to throw him, and he also would throw her in break falls. but they allowed, because it was okay for her to move this way and she could go over and slap the mat, but she couldn't get down and roll. She didn't have that dexterity. So we adjusted different parts of the movement. I know it's all to do with where their strengths were and where the limitations were, and we just worked around them.
So that's yeah, consistent with what some of the earlier presenters were saying about going to where the students are and supporting them with what they can handle or what they need. No sooner had I spoken when the chat box started filling up with comments and some questions. The comments are all quite positive, and I hope you have a chance to go through them when you have a little more time. We do have a question from Liz Kinley saying, what tips can you give for improving balance and stability?
Well, strangely enough, what we did at the beginning of class, I found it challenging today because it's the first time I have actually been in the dojo since since in-person practice finished. And these mats have a lot more spring to them than my floor in the basement where I do my virtual classes. But the idea of just breathing and then trying to lower yourself, it really does help. Finding the mai and the foot posture that works for you. It really helps being aware of when you're turning, and also all of the things we did today about rotating and then doing the pivot. It improves your balance if you know that where you're pivoting about. So it really helps. Oh, excuse me one second. Sensei, the internet unstable apparently. Okay. I'm here, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Another question from Kelly Bannister. Do you have any view on what part of the foot to activate in relation to the ground for balance? I've heard that the big toe, the ball of the big toe, and the whole instep. What is your recommendation?
That can often be individual. I do have compromised feet at this point in time. I have, I don't know if it's just advancing age or whatever, but my heels work just fine. I sometimes have more problem rotating, but I think it's important to continually move them. All parts of your feet play a role. And I think one of the most important things is to rotate and to stimulate the circulation in your feet, and the whole thing about letting them come alive, because my toes cramp up a lot in different times. Sometimes they're fine, sometimes they're not. So you really have to have that sense of moving and allowing your, working on the flexibility of your feet. And so then I find it's much better. So I tend to move, either moving on the ball of my foot and allowing my toes to come around, or if I was doing this one here, it changes as Don Ragush Sensei was saying. If we are turning on the ball on our heels, we end up in a different mai. We have a much more open stance. When we're moving from this position, you're more in the sense of the Gyakuhami Ura. So you're activating that part. So you're doing that because it takes you to the outside. So I use both.
Okay. Two more questions have come in, and I think they merit maybe not all the time that it would take to answer them, but maybe we could shorten our break just to give you a chance to answer both. And I'm taking them out of order because the second question is a bit more open-ended. So the first question is from Teresa. When I first started out, I definitely had a disconnect between where I thought my feet were and where they actually were. I got a lot of scolding for looking at my feet, but I found it necessary to adjust the position of my feet because I really thought my feet were in the right place and they weren't. It took a couple of years before I got my feet in the right place. So here's her question. Is there something that a teacher can learn to understand that not everyone has awareness of what their bodies can do versus what they hope their bodies can do?
Well, as a teacher and a student myself, I still find that. I still remember the time I was barreling down a mountain and they taped our ski class, and then I watched the playback, and I said, who's that person crawling down the hill? I mean, my whole sense of where I was and how incredibly fast I was we have a different sense of ourselves. We do have mirrors in our dojo, and sometimes that's very helpful. But the reason I referred to your vision and where you are about moving. Ultimately, as you can move, you're much freer to move if you are in that plane and you move around that point. It's important, perhaps you can use that for static movement. Yes, you're checking where you are. You just have to be aware that as soon as you start to move in any dynamic sense, the moment you look down, your back is bent and you're rooted to that point, and you can't turn the same way. So I think it's teachers, yes, we all need to be aware of where our students are, and then gradually see where their sticking points are and try and develop exercises that will help them find that position.
Okay. Previous question is a comment and then a question from Sebastian. Thank you, Hilary Sensei. Being at the University of Victoria, you have taught so many new students. How do you balance the needs of senior students with new ones?
It's an ongoing thing. We had years when we had large enrollments, people coming in, and every term we do a beginner class. But depending on the number of senior students we have, and now we have mostly people there are very few beginners, particularly in the last year and a half or 2 years. So what we would always do is everyone would practice together for half an hour. And part of the role of the senior students was to partner up with beginners and to train, part of the warm up and the training. But then I would always split the class. We had a large enough space that we could provide basic instruction and basic forms. And sometimes the senior instructor would teach that, or one of the senior students. They would each go and take a turn to be out, and we would direct a senior portion of the class. Depends on how much space you have and who you have. Sometimes in a smaller space, years ago, we would have different ranks, and we would just divide people up by ranks. And then the basic rank and the juniors would do a basic form. The seniors would do the same technique. They would add timing, they would add power, they would add speed.
Okay. Last question. I hope we can squeeze this in here. This is from Alex, I believe maybe from Russia. Regarding the weight redistribution on the feet, what is the right way during the turns?
I don't know if there's a right way. I think if you remember from yesterday's class with Osawa Sensei, when he first moved in to do Taino Tenkan, he said, as you move and slide off to the side, move your foot slightly. And at this point, you're in a position to sweep the other foot. Then he said, ultimately, as we get better, as we move in, it becomes a single movement. But I think it's when you're moving, as you're here, you're balanced on both feet. As we come here, everything comes to this foot. Move forward, we balance again. It's sometimes said that walking is a controlled form of stumbling, that we move from positions of stability to instability to stability again. And that's one reason that I was trying to have people do this and practice this movement. And, and Natan Sensei's lower body strengthening is really good for having that sense of being able to be aligned as you turn.
Right. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you again so much for a terrific class. And thanks to everyone in the audience for your participation. And we hope you've not only enjoyed this class, but the whole weekend seminar.